C.Simmons with you here on the 24th day of August in the year of our Lord 2018. It is TRAVERS Stakes Eve. It is the day before a series of Grade 1 races and top graded events. Basically a festival of racing on this coming Saturday on the same day as the 149th edition of the Midsummer Derby, run at a mile and a quarter for the 3-year-olds at Saratoga. And in part one, we talked a little bit about what the $64 questions and the multitude of those questions were as to, which horse is going to emerge, who's going to be able to get over the surface, can horses redeem themselves in the case of Mendelssohn, can Gronkowski consolidate what he did in the Belmont Stakes, even though he hasn't run since that second place effort to the Triple Crown winner Justify, who has been retired for racing and will not participate in this edition of the Travers Stakes. And the other questions about whether a female can run against males in the terms of Wonder Godot, who won the first 2 legs of the Canadian Triple Crown and passed up the opportunity to sweep the series in the Breeders' Stakes by coming to New York and Saratoga Springs to participate against the best 3-year-olds, arguably, in the country in this particular event. And then horses from the Triple Crown, the Derby, Preakness, and Belmont, whether they ran in the first 3 legs. Justify and Bravazzo were the only 2 to run in all 3 legs. Bravazzo was the last of those, the one individual out of those 2 still in training. He's going to be in the race. So he, along with horses that ran in either the first 2 legs, like Good Magic, who's the favorite, or on the bookend part of the Triple Crown, the Derby and the Belmont, and that would include Vino Rosso, horses like that. Can those horses be able to step into the spotlight and improve upon what they did in the Classics earlier in the year and dominate this race in collective fashion, or if one horse can stand out and stamp himself not only as a Travers winner but a viable and logical and very, very viable contender for the Breeders' Cup Classic, which is the primary race a lot of these 3-year-olds will be pointing toward, although it is pretty much well documented that a few could find other spots to run in. The Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile is going to certainly be an option for some horses. Some may switch to the turf and run in the mile, although it's a race in which you have to show quickness. And then maybe someone will step up and trip and go in the Breeders' Cup Turf. So there are options, and then there are going to be some horses such as Promises Fulfilled and a couple of others who are going to be running in the Allen Jerkins on this Travers Day undercard that are going to cut back in distance and look at the option of running in the Breeders' Cup Sprint or the Dirt Mile, or perhaps even switch surfaces and go to the turf. So there's a lot at play here. But as far as for the 3-year-old honors, even though Justify is pretty much signed, sealed, has the 3-year-old and Horse of the Year titles sewn up, there's still a lot to talk about. And at the least, we're going to see some interesting finalists, some horses that not only will get a measure of opportunity to win big races, but will also have, if they're not taken out of training, the chance to really prove themselves to be stars in the future in the next calendar year, 2019. And the Pegasus is going to be a race you're going to look at. And Wonder Godot, for example, if she does well here, or even if she can recover from possibly crashing and burning in the Midsummer Derby, she has an opportunity to still be one of those horses, one of the ones to look at for the Pegasus. She has the opportunity to have a career in which she can step in or outside of running against her own sex. And that's what is possibly what, I think that's what a lot of people are looking at. Certainly Mark Casse directly is going to look at what are the potentials for her. And running here at a mile and a quarter, a distance that she seems, out of all the horses in here, have the best chance of doing. So that's kind of what we covered in part one. We looked at, if Mendelssohn can recover from the disaster, the Dubai disaster, in the Kentucky Derby, as I call it, the Derby disaster from Dubai, that being Mendelssohn. And then he since, ran into another train wreck and roadblock in the Dwyer at a distance that it seemed to be well within, his reach at Belmont Park, and he just got smoked. He stalked and set the pace, and then he just emptied out. So, with that being said, and not having had a prep to perhaps tie up some loose ends, he's a horse that's basically been battered, bruised, and buried at this point. And in this field, it would seem that he is in over his head, and that may not be true. Maybe that ability that he showed in the UAE Derby and the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf in 2017 out at Del Mar is going to surface here. And again, the odds, he's at 12-1. His odds may go up higher because of the aforementioned concerns. There's a lot of mystery with these 3-year-olds. if these other horses from the Jim Dandy off the slow 93 speed figures can turn that around and make marked improvement, or is 93 going to be good enough to win a Travers? And we know historically that that's probably not going to, be sufficient to win a race like this, especially in a field where, you know that someone is bound to jump up and make the leap, the supersonic leap, or maintain what has been, in Wonder Godot's case, very, very good form. And in Good Magic's case, he's been, if not overwhelmingly spectacular, he's been solid. And this is his opportunity, as I said in part one, to jump up and prove that he's a true star. His resume speaks for itself. He's going to be a nice stallion prospect, being by Curlin, who's run 2 turns, ran second in the Kentucky Derby, won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile prior to that, won the Bluegrass in the lead up to the Kentucky Derby, ran a very credible 4th in the Preakness, and has since won the Haskell Invitational in grand style, even though the numbers weren't that great in terms of the 150.10 time or the, about a 97-98 speed figure, which is a good number on the buyers. So he has an opportunity to really jump up and break out. But is he a horse who's going to stay where he is and somebody can surpass that? And Catholic Boy is, of course, coming off the turf, to the turf, but he has had experience on both surfaces, won the Remsen at 1.125 miles as a 2-year-old. He is a horse that some people think that now he's more of a turf horse because his trainer brought him back after he bled so significantly he couldn't make it to the Classics or even be pointed toward the Derby, Preakness, or Belmont in the Florida Derby. That's where he had his issue. And people thought from off of that, oh, he can't, run on the dirt. That was a physical issue, if anything else. And I think his trainer did right by also saying, we'll bring him back on the turf. And, we have plenty of time to engage in dirt events. And this is where he's decided to make his cameo in the 149th edition of the Travers Stakes. And I think he's going to do very, very well. And again, we all know that, like Churchill Downs, you're going into the unknown, not going 1.25 miles. Some of these horses navigated it reasonably well. Others did not. And they're going to have to prove, just like they, on the first Saturday in May, can they not only handle the distance, but the surface? Because this surface is different than Churchill Downs. It's even somewhat a little different than Belmont when you run a race like the Belmont or the Preakness. There's a difference in the surface. And I think it has a tendency to slow horses down a little bit. And if you're not physically fit and tied on to go 1.25 miles, this track is going to swallow you up. So I think that that's something that is overlooked in many cases. Saratoga is not this lightning fast surface at all times that is conducive to speed horses but can still play fair to older horses. It's a track that can be deep, tiring, and cuppy. So